I'd like to call to order a special meeting on Wednesday, August 27th. And as I look over the dais, I don't need a roll call. Do I need a roll call for this? Okay, thank you. Councilman Laura Tano is here. We were going to say that you weren't. And Councilman Campbell is once again participating by the telephone. Are you there, Wally?
Yes, I am, Mayor. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we don't have any communications. Now is the time for citizens who would like to address the City Council on any non-agenda item. None? Okay. And so then we'll go on to our first and only business item is we have to consider rescinding the ordinance 14-1303 pertaining to certain matters referred to the November 2014 ballot. Rory Massey, City Attorney, to present. Rory?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. The item you have in front of you this evening is ordinance number 14-1308, which the effect of that ordinance would be to rescind or repeal ordinance 14-1303, which the council enacted in June of this year. And as you recall, the subject matter of that ordinance was the consolidated elections, the conflict we had between our city charter and the state law, which requires that all statewide elections and subdivisions be placed on fall of even year election cycles beginning in 2014. As we recall, our current charter has a conflict because historically the city of Goodyear has always had city council and local elections in the spring of odd years. There was ongoing litigation and still is litigation concerning whether or not this state law does apply to charter cities under the Arizona Constitution, or whether the conduct and method of handling local elections is a matter of purely local concern that a city can govern through its charter. Back when the council met in June, there was uncertainty. There had been a trial court decision in the Phoenix and Tucson case that said that city charters did trump the state law, but there was a pending appeal at the Arizona Court of Appeals. The city was faced with timing issues and whether or not we could have someone conduct our elections. As the Maricopa County Elections Department had indicated at that point, they were unwilling to conduct our election in the spring of next year. And the only options we were locating were the city of Phoenix, which was going to offer to conduct our election at cost of 2.5 times what our normal election cost would be. It was over $300,000. So based upon the ongoing uncertainty in the court cases and the higher election costs, the ordinance referring this matter to the ballot, as well as two technical amendments to other charter provisions, was enacted by the council. On August 18th, the Court of Appeals did render a decision in this matter, and they did find that the conduct of elections is a matter of local concern, and that city charters do trump the state law as far as the timing of elections. That is still subject to further appeal to the state Supreme Court. That is not an appeal of right. That would be up to the state Supreme Court on whether or not to accept that decision. And at this point, we don't have any information on whether or not that will happen. We certainly anticipate there will be an appeal filed by the state. That's what we're hearing, but that hasn't happened yet. And we won't know for quite some time whether the Supreme Court does accept that case. Maricopa County Elections has indicated to us that at this point they would conduct an election for us in the spring of next year, regardless of whether or not an appeal is filed with the state Supreme Court. Pending, of course, that the Supreme Court doesn't render a decision prior to our spring election cycle next year. But looking at the timing, it's more likely than not that the Supreme Court would not render a decision prior to our March cycle of next year. With that, we did draft a ordinance that is in front of you this evening that would rescind the previous action by the council and remove that item from the November ballot. And we would remain on our charter mandated election cycle, which would be spring of odd years. Normal costs of the elections would be at the Maricopa County Elections Department. So there's no additional cost. We haven't lost any money at this point by removing the item from the ballot. The election was called initially for the general plan, which was required to go to the ballot in November of this year. Publicity pamphlets have not been printed yet. Ballots have not been printed yet. So This is the moment that we could take this action, and it's been indicated that we have until Thursday to take this action. So that's why the special meeting was called this afternoon. The ordinance, as we stated before, does rescind the previous ordinance passed last June. It also gives authority to the city manager and city attorney to take any appropriate action to further this ordinance, and that does spell out litigation. So we don't know that we need to file a case at this point, depending on whether or not there's a pending appeal to the state Supreme Court. If we needed to do so, this ordinance would allow us to do so. Other cities have done that are not actively involved in the Phoenix and Tucson case. They filed just a holding action, and the state has stipulated to a stay on enforcement. So we may have to do that. We just have to wait and see what the state Supreme Court does and what the timing works out. But this ordinance would also allow us to do that. This also, if the ordinance does pass this afternoon, we'd ask that you take a second vote on an emergency clause, and that would make the ordinance immediately effective. And with that, I'd answer any questions you may have.
Good, let's just go on. I'm sorry, are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
All right. Will the city clerk please read ordinance 14-1308 by title only?
Adopt ordinance 14-1308, rescinding ordinance 14-1303 that was previously adopted by the City Council that referred certain matters to the ballot in the November 2014 special election and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Could I please have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
I heard a motion by Councilman Osborne, a second by Councilman Loretano. So let's open for discussion. So I'm going to vary it. So I'm going to start with you, Bill, down at this end, and then you want to start?
No, that's fine.
And then I'm going to switch over to you. Do you have? And so we're going to do it that way. All right. Does that make it too complicated for you? I just want to give everybody
going
a fair
first. It's not
chance.
complicated
All right.
for me.
You go first. All right, Bill.
All right. To kind of reiterate some of the items that we talked about the other night, and for me in particular, what was very telling about this is the decision by the unanimous court on this matter. And there's a couple of items that one of the presiding judges mentioned. And in their ruling, they talked about an off-cycle election allows a city to obtain the full focus of the electorate. The judge also said it insulated the process from the influence of partisan issues that are inevitably interwoven with federal, state, and county elections. He said the separate city elections also ensures that local candidates do not have to compete with state and national candidates to get their messages out. And I think those two or three sentences really speak very much to how I feel personally about the situation. I drive through the city, and we even had a discussion with the city manager 2 meetings ago about doing something about all the signs that are falling apart and whatnot. And this is only half the cycle. In 2 years from now, there's going to be, another half a dozen or a dozen signs literally littering our streets. And I have never been a proponent of the consolidated election. I think that it does a lot to disenfranchise our voters, and and I said it the night that I voted on it. I had no choice but to vote in favor of the original ordinance, because we were forced into a situation. And all I can say is thank God for the system that we have of checks and balances, that we've got a judicial part of our system that stopped the madness as far as I was concerned. So the other issue that makes this a little, I think, easier for us to consider is the fact that at any time, any one of our residents can begin the process to change the charter. And if the electorate of our city wants to make a change, they can certainly do that. There's a process that allows that to happen as well. And that is always an option, and it has always been an option. And this charter of ours has been voted on time after time after time, with this retaining this election cycle being retained every single year. So I know that there had been concern about this being a turnaround or a slap in the face of the voters, and it's really not, because it has always been in the hands of the voters. So I certainly want to urge the rest of the council to support this, and that is certainly why I'm supportive of the change.
Okay, thank you. Sherilyn?
Well, I'm not going to repeat everything Bill said, although I am firmly in line with you, Bill, as surprising as that might be. But I really feel very, very strongly that, number one, that it is disconcerting to have the state dictate to a city something that is in direct conflict with their charter. That somehow does not seem the American way to me. But additionally, I felt when I first heard about this that it was a way of disenfranchising our constituents at the city level from the voting and understanding the complexity of government issues that would be coming onto the ballot. Because by the time you get to the very end, and we know that it's federal, state, county, and then all the judges that come before a city is on the ballot. And that's a lot for me. I mean, as a voter to swim through and study and really make intelligent decisions. So I really felt that it was just making it harder for our constituents to become engaged with our city government. And for that reason, I fully support it as well.
Thank you. Councilman Moritano?
I want to thank our city attorney for his leadership for this, going through this process and explaining the process to us as well. And that was one reason is his foresight that we took the last vote we did. We didn't, so the public knows, as Councilman Stibb said, we don't want to do a turnaround. Our citizens and what they want and how they want to govern the city, that is our job, to listen to our citizens, how they want to do it. And I, like the others, felt very boxed in with where we were at before, because the possibility and the probability of us having to pay extra money and the uncertainty was not something that any of us wanted to see. We also didn't want to disenfranchise other individuals who might choose to run as well, which was a concern as well, that, we want our citizens to be heard throughout the whole process, and that's what's important. I agree 100% with Councilman Stipp. Anytime citizens would like to change a charter, they do have that right, and of course that's something that, if that's how it goes, and that would be put on the ballot for not just this issue, but any issue. And there will be changes in the future. But when I reviewed the case and I read the actual language, it was quite compelling and quite firm how the Court of Appeals stated that the legislature had clearly overreached its bounds, and they pretty much said they could find no compelling state interest. The state had not provided a compelling state interest and had not found any reason why that they should take on this responsibility, that the funding and those issues are for the city. And they had provided, I believe the opinion also said there was no proof in there either as to what the state was contending as to either higher voter turnout or a better, monetary outlay for the cities. So when I look at how strongly that opinion was worded, I would have to agree with our talks with the city attorney that we do have a very good chance of it not being appealed to the Supreme Court. We have a very good chance of this decision being upheld. It seems like it was worded in such a fashion that this is hopefully the end point. And we can only hope the legislature will not try to go back and pass this again, because the chance is so small, at least that's my belief, that the we could go up another level and lose at another level. I think we are safe to continue as our normal election cycle for all the reasons stated where our citizens would like it. And I think that's the appropriate thing to do. And when we do talk about the citizens, the only emails I have received, I don't know if councilors received other, have been to basically continue the course as this city has chosen and our citizens have chosen to do. And that's what I intend to do.
Thank you. Councilman Osborne.
Thank you. There's not a lot left to be said. So really, quite frankly, I'm in favor of sticking with what the citizens of Goodyear had stated. And that was, this is Goodyear's charter. This is Goodyear's election cycle. And wholeheartedly what Bill and what Sherry had stated, we all know that if this is not what our citizens want, they can come to us and this can be changed. However, it is in the best interest of the city that the election cycle is on odd years, is in the spring. There's not the conflict, just as what was stated before, amongst other things. And, you know, I'm quite frankly very happy with our judicial system. There have been many things that our Arizona legislature has done to cities in the last few years. And we all know that this last item here was a major issue for us. And so I'm happy that something's finally turned in our favor, and this hopefully will stick and we'll be done with it. And so I will be voting in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Pizzillo.
And don't forget Wally when I'm done.
Oh,
Okay.
well then wait, I'm going to get Wally on
Okay,
right now.
go ahead.
Okay, I'll give you, Wally?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would just like to add that I agree with all of my council members. I was very concerned when the legislature on their own tried to take away our right to have our charter govern our city. I know it's the home rule provision, but it's something that we really need to cherish, and it's what our citizens want, and I am going to vote in favor of the ordinance taking the language off the ballot and then having the election cycle go as our charter stipulates.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Pizzillo?
Thank you. Coming last, there's not a whole lot to add except a couple things. I thought the city attorney did a good job summarizing what brought us to this point. But I feel strongly with our state legislature, they have a tendency to do this to our cities. And if they would have left alone, since they believe one size fits all, which I do not believe that's the case, we have various demographics and various makeups of communities throughout Arizona. And as a result of trying to put everybody in one, I guess, peg, it's got us to this point. The reason why I originally voted for it, as has been previously mentioned, is that we were between a rock and a hard place. We had to appeal. The county wouldn't put on our election. As a result, if we went outside, it would cost twice as much. And if we would have lost in the appeals, there would have been a very short window for our citizens to put their paperwork in and apply. It would have been very destructive for them. So the fact that now as Councilmember Loretano, eloquently said, when it comes to the decision, now we have a decision, which I firmly believe in, that local elections states should be under the control of city charters. To me, that's the key issue, that they overstep their bounds. And that one size does not fit all. And in this community, we have a lot of people who leave in August. And historically, a lot of our elections get settled in the primary. So what would happen, in my humble opinion, is that you would be disfranchising a lot of our voters, because the only way they're going to vote is if they actually ask for a ballot to be forwarded to wherever they are. Am I correct on the clerk on that? Is that they don't automatically forward ballots. So that creates to be a problem. So what, in my view, what would happen is a lot of those people who would traditionally vote would not be voting. And I think that's wrong. Not only that, I think Councilmember Stipp did it eloquently when he said points of value of having, I mean, there's a value of having an off cycle. You see what happens when partisanship takes into place. Look at Washington. Look what's happening there. Things don't get done. It's important that local elected officials are nonpartisan. We work very well in this Dias community, and we have to because of the services that we provide. Day to day, you get in the morning, your water, that's us. You drive the streets, it's us. You got to call for either public safety or the fire police, that's us. We impact the day-to-day lives. We have to work. We can't put stuff off like some of the others can. So with that, I think it's important that we determine our own, and like mentioned earlier, if for some reason our citizens want to change it, then so be it. They have the way of doing that. So again, I think the city issues get lost in the August and the November cycle. And I think it's important to put our issues up front. And I think the spring will do that. Not only that, by making this move now, what will happen is it'll give any citizen who wants to run for election plenty of time to get their paperwork in. And then again, I would suggest to our staff, which I've already talked to, and I'm sure everybody else feels the same way, is that we be proactive in getting that message out that the city's open for business election in March. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, I want to congratulate, before I give my opinion, Council, on you really looking into this and thinking about it. And that is the reason that I waited the time frame from our last meeting to this meeting, because I did want you to be able to reread everything and think about it and not be harassed in front of a group that you maybe felt like you had to be really quick in your decision making. I want to be sure that you were certain about this. As you all know, I wrote the governor a letter as soon as that ordinance was put out, changing our election date, and we did not receive any response that I'm aware of. And I did tell them about the disenfranchising of our community and our senior community in particular. But we did not get anywhere with this. And then I kind of, I started thinking about it later, and then when we made all this change and we went on to do this, then I got to thinking, okay, now we're going to revert back, and just like I think you said, Vice Mayor, I don't want the citizens to think we're not being transparent. So we have a general plan going up to vote, and this was an opportunity for them to vote on this. There's a lot of new population in Goodyear, and so I thought it would give them that opportunity. But the more that I ponder upon this, and the more I hear my counsel and the points that you brought forth, I think that we're going in the right direction of, of turning this ordinance down that was presented to us from do we call it an ordinance from the state or a statute?
It was a statute.
A statute, okay, to turn down the state statute and adopt this ordinance. So we have a motion on the table. We have a second. So roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano?
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Councilmember Homan?
Aye.
Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
And just before we go to the emergency clause, I hope this sends a message to our legislature that we do not want them to be our counsel in Goodyear. We have a very capable council of making our own decisions. We respect the position they hold and the job they need to do. But I do think they need to limit themselves to at least coming to the cities and proposing and asking us, how would this affect your city? I would greatly appreciate that. So with that, I understand we have to do an emergency clause, so I'm going to let you lead me in that.
Yes, Mayor. I just asked that a council member make a motion to declare an emergency clause attaches to this ordinance.
All right.
And that basically makes the ordinance immediately effective.
Great. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. I heard a motion from Councilman Stipp and a second from Councilman Osborne. I think we have. And fine. And we do roll call on that too. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano?
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Councilmember Homan?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo?
Aye.
Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Okay, great. And I think that's it. We don't have any other business on the table, so this meeting is adjourned.